To a lot of gamers, it seems the absence of the regular gaming expos in the summer of 2020 has been rather palpable. New things to put our eyeballs on felt far and few between in comparison to what we are used to. And for some, that was simply unbearable. It was basically the so-called hype machine not doing what it is meant to be doing around that time of year. Because it couldn't. Although a lot of companies have still been pushing on, showing new games and attempting to uphold the status quo, the worldwide pandemic unavoidably has made things a bit different. And you know what they say about things being different. People don't quite like it. Nowhere is this more apparent than with the most hardcore of Nintendo fans.
Nintendo Switch, I love you, alright?
As one of the more passionate groups of gamers, endlessly amused by patterns, outrageous hints and dubious rumors, the current state of the world has proven to be a bit of a problem to them. You see, their favorite company has not been announcing games at the pace they are comfortable with, or expecting for that matter. Nintendo's live-streamed commercial show for upcoming games, Nintendo Direct, has not been happening like they've usually been. What the fanbase would proclaim to be a proper Direct has not happened for over a year, and even though there has been plenty of, I guess, non-proper ones, it is simply not enough. The wait and speculation about when Nintendo would hold a new gaming game showcase brought fans to a fever pitch, and the silence surrounding it all made them worried. Nintendo have of course been open about how the pandemic has affected them several times, even putting disclaimers before every live-streamed show. It should of course be more than evident why things might be a bit different this year, but that has not stopped these particular fans from being completely dumbfounded over what is going on with the big N behind the scenes.
Lots of people have been seeing that Nintendo has been going through lots of problems with the coronavirus and everything. That's obviously not a problem. They can stitch together trailers of third-party video games. They can stitch together trailers of, first-party games as well then.
Where's Bayonetta 3? Where's Metroid Prime 4? What's going on with the Metroid Prime Trilogy HD Collection?
From the delayed March Direct to the absence of an E3 substitute and a dry summer, it just doesn't make any sense, you know.
Metroid Prime 4 is still a logo. What is going on? What?
Even when smaller directs happened despite the current circumstances, they were met with disappointment, anger, and even more speculation of when they would give us a real Nintendo Direct. Which apparently brought this guy to show off his, at that point, recently bought copy of Paper Mario The Origami King, only to then shortly thereafter complain that he has not turned on one of his several Switch consoles for over a month. Because there is somehow nothing to play on it, other than indie games. And Paper Mario, of course. From watching videos and reading comments by upset Nintendo fans, while also looking at the rather sprawling library of available and upcoming games, it does however become strikingly clear that the problem is not the fact that there is nothing to play. Not really. There are clearly plenty of games to pick and choose from on Nintendo's platform, some of which are even from Nintendo themselves. There was something else bothering these people. A lack of excitement and things to buy in the coming future. It was not about what we could play at the time, but rather announcements of what we could look forward to.
What is the next big game? What's the next big game? We have Paper Mario and Origami Trail, which I'm hearing mixed reviews on, and I don't know.
This kind of mindset is of course not exclusive to Nintendo fans, far from it. They are, however, a great microcosm of this phenomenon, as they are observably invested in their video games, to the point where it at times frustrates them profoundly to not reach sufficient excitement levels. They might even start criticizing Nintendo's business practices, get close to questioning this endless cycle they have found themselves in, only to then suddenly turn on a dime when Nintendo shows them that Super Mario 3D collection they have been clamoring for all year. Limited time availability? Manufacturer scarcity? I can't hear you over the sound of Mario! It would be easy for us to point to this behavior and mock these individuals for being a bit over-dramatic about their preferred entertainment.
I am a dedicated fan. I'm somebody that enjoys buying your stuff.
But without hopefully taking too much personal responsibility away from the self-induced disillusioned gamers, we would propose that it is not entirely a matter that they are consciously engaging with, nor is it one of their own making. While being excited for upcoming things is mostly harmless, it should be of importance to recognize your behavior surrounding that excitement, and more importantly, what it stems from. This particular group behavior of partaking, perpetuating, and valuing the hype of video games, for example, can with much certainty be attributed to the capitalist natures of video games in contemporary society. One where games are approached more as mere products than as an art form, where wild consumerism is constantly being portrayed as an unquestionable good, and where gamer identity is packaged as just another marketing tool. Before we get ahead of ourselves, we would like to begin by asking the audience an important question regarding this topic. What is a gamer? It might come off as a bit of a silly question to ask, but humor us just for a moment here. It is a matter of subcultural identification, with no strictly objective truth to it. A gamer could be a lot of things depending on who you ask. Even you could be one if you like. And while it is nice to think that anyone could participate, there undoubtedly has been historical and cultural barriers that more strictly defined who could truly partake in the fun. During the inception of home video game systems, games were mostly targeted towards families, and it was not until their resurgence after the so-called video game crash of 1983 that the serious construction of who was a video game player took hold. As most of you probably know, it is true that games as a medium for most of its lifespan have been targeted towards straight cis guys. And while that is not truly what defines a gamer, it is the corporately constructed audience that was purposely narrowed to benefit the industry that formed said audience. In a relatively short time frame, we're talking the last 25 years or so, video games have gone from being a somewhat niche pastime to becoming the largest cultural industry in our contemporary society. As such, the medium unavoidably reaches a far more diverse group of people than the industry in question used to solely target and aim to exploit. But that corporately constructed idea of a gamer is certainly one that still lives on in some capacity among creators, players, and your dad through unconscious associations. It was, after all, not that long ago that video games were seen as strictly a boys' thing, much thanks to how the industry itself marketed, normalized, and sold the medium to the masses. The bigwigs said it was a boys-only club, and so it was. A boys-only club. Brad had to choose if he wanted to hang out with his stupid girlfriend and watch chick flicks or go play Crash Bandicoot with hot-ass Lara Croft like a real manly man.
You are so totally whipped. I'm Brad. Let's ride a bicycle bill for two. Then we can go to the potpourri store and then go buy sheep.
With shit like this forming the cultural discourse, it is no wonder it turned out like it did. And these associations stuck, and like we said, still linger to this day in the minds of people. And this does indeed have an impact on who identifies as a gamer or not. As Adrienne Shaw puts it in her article on Not Becoming Gamers, being a gamer is defined partially in relation to the dominant discourses about who plays video games, which historically has been straight cis guys. But there are more broad aspects that apply to gamers and video game players in general outside of this norm. In the very same article, Shaw mentions that being a gamer is linked to consumption. Not surprisingly, as gaming is inherently a consumerist hobby after all. But it is not just about consuming any video games. There is a form of cultural capital tied to all of this. What you play, how much time and money you spend on those games, your knowledge surrounding the medium, what video game systems and merchandise you own, are just a few vital factors that seem to be important to people's perception of gamer identity. Basically, the more shit you own, the more likely you are to identify as a gamer, and in turn, be seen as one. It is a highly exclusionary in-group in that sense. The line between us and them is quite clearly defined by what you buy, and more importantly, your ability to buy and engage with those products. Sonny Moraine goes a bit further in her 2014 article, Not a Real Gamer, where she proclaims that
this isn't just about consumption, it's about conspicuous consumption. How high a priority are games for you? How much do you spend? How much of a premium do you place on getting something as soon as it's out? These are some of the ways in which the lines are drawn and in which they're maintained, and it's about identity expressed as buying things.
And that last sentence, identity expressed as buying things, is quite a striking one, isn't it? Gamer identity as pure consumer identity, a performance of cultural capital have and have-nots, a never-ending goal of consuming more in order to affirm one's identity socially. This obviously works in the favor of the companies that facilitate the buying of said things, and has very much been created by design. The video game industry has, to put it bluntly, done an amazing job of conditioning gamers into first and foremost becoming good consumers. And perhaps this short exploration of institutionalized gamer identity at least partially can explain the behavior of the hardcore Nintendo crowd we were speaking of before. As deeply invested in Nintendo on several levels, they are high-end consumers, spending resources such as money, time, and energy on the brand regularly. They religiously follow the news cycle, keep up to date with the discourse surrounding their favorite company, and perhaps most important to this discussion about exploitative conditioning is their engagement with the hype machine. The excitement generator, what is supposed to keep them invested in their brands selling them things. The most often recurring talking points we observed while exploring the landscape of gaming YouTubers can indeed be boiled down to announcements and excitement, of which there is a firm connection between. Having new things be announced to perpetuate excitement is portrayed as very important. It is quite common to hear them speak to their audiences about the need for new things to be shown off, and in turn, how the lack of said things to be excited for is a huge problem. Announcements are, however, obviously only new for so long, and as we move further away from the initial announcement, the excitement sharply decreases, as can be seen in this very scientific and professional graph. This basically means that there has to be a constant flow of news and content to feed the masses. One announcement is not enough. There is always another bigger one waiting just around the corner. For example, yeah, people are really excited right now about having the 3D Mario games on Switch. But when that initial short hype is done and gone, the honeymoon over, then it's time to move on to the next thing that is to be consumed. The idea of hype and excitement surrounding commercials and future products to consume is so deeply entrenched in the very core of gamer identity, to the point where it could arguably be seen as one of the most defining characteristics of being a gamer in general. So when the Nintendo fans on YouTube overhype upcoming events, they are doing what they are supposed to. When they are upset about not getting to see the next big thing to buy, they are doing so because that is what they have been trained to expect. They are simply performing gamer identity as corporately designed by the industry itself. This means that when the hype machine does not work as intended, even if it is for obvious reasons like a global pandemic, the companies in question are not producing the resources that they have conditioned gamers to expect. And in the case of the hardcore Nintendo fans, rad-ass games like Paper Mario and whatever is shown on smaller indie directs and partner showcases can be dismissed entirely because they simply do not fit the bill of what is considered to be a so-called core game. This hierarchy is quite evident when you consider just how much importance is put on the differentiation between indie games and what is usually referred to as AAA games. There are simply certain games that have been elevated by the industry to the point where they could be considered real games because of their cultural status, or more importantly, because of the sheer amount of money that went into making them, and that they have to make back eventually. Indie games and less expensive ventures are fine and all, but they are not pushed as the main attraction, so to speak. Instrumental in the hype machine for these core games are the video game conventions that are usually accompanied by big live-streamed events filled to the brim with announcements and previews. None is of course bigger than what too often has been regrettably referred to as the video game Mecca, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3 for short. Here, the rampant consumerism and institutionalized structures of gaming culture is celebrated and even encouraged throughout several days of advertisements and uncritical enthusiast press coverage. Every year is the most exciting time to be a gamer, and the absolute shit ton of you out there who all consume is something to celebrate.
Man, there's never been a more exciting time to be in the gaming industry. I'm told there are 1 billion gamers worldwide. There's 220 million in the United States alone.
You as simple consumers are supposed to be excited about the unsustainable industrial growth, how huge and bloated it has become, how much bigger it is than other types of entertainment.
I've witnessed the growth of our favorite form of entertainment, and now video games are bigger than the movie industry, bigger than music, bigger than television.
And not to mention how it keeps expanding with more and more and more.
The expanding universe of gaming has opened a new era of creative possibility, with more games, more creators, and more industry players than ever before.
Of course, announcements of what is interpreted as real games to buy and the excitement surrounding them would be valued to the extent that they are when the industry with its shitty events shamelessly builds itself up to be the most important thing in existence. The industrial gaming culture is one of continuous feedback, where gamers are made and expected to be permanently engaged in the consumption of media. There is a persistent fear of missing out, manufactured through practices such as pre-orders, limited editions, console exclusives, microtransactions, and sponsored content. Heck, just being there day one for a new game or console release is important to keep up with the rapidly fleeting discourse. In the book Exploiting Fandom, fan studies scholar Mel Stanfill talks about the domestication of fandom, how a fanbase is cultivated to participate in consumption of media in industry-useful ways. We would argue that gamers are one such cultivated fanbase, docile, useful, and controllable by way of consumer conditioning. And their identity is very much being exploited. And it is indeed working so well that people like Bobby Kotick is so rich at this point that he's eating money for every single meal of the day. He's not even using cutlery, he's using his pig hands or whatever it is pigs have. But does it really have to be this way? This might be a good place to clarify. With this essay, we have not aimed to diminish anyone's fun, to say that excitement about your favorite games is wrong, or that gamers and their social identity is inherently stupid. That is far from it. The medium of video games is a beautiful and exciting one, unexplored and artistic in ways completely unique to it, and gamers, and whoever decides to participate in the playing of them, are certainly a diverse group of people that all have something worthwhile to bring to the medium. Blaming them for being invested and excited about things that they love and cherish in some way would be us blaming ourselves for, quite honestly, doing the same. We bear no ill will towards the individuals that we have shown in this video, but we think that their behavior is demonstrating very well what we have been talking about here, how gamer identity as consumer identity might manifest itself and, quite frankly, become a detriment to their enjoyment of the medium. They are so deeply entrenched in the cycle of consumption the industry has manufactured that one could interpret it to be all there is of importance. And maybe that kind of sucks. You know when YouTubers sit in front of their shelves full of games and merchandise? Well, it's not just done as an eye-catching backdrop. It tells you something about that person. It communicates to you, the audience, that it is a gaming space, and more importantly, that the person standing in front of it knows what they're talking about. See, they even have Earthbound, like real gamers do. It is a cultural capital, performed for everyone to see. A performance of gamer identity. And it would be kind of stupid of us to not acknowledge our own participation in what could be called gaming culture. But what we would like to argue is that that participation could be done more responsibly. The Super Mario 35th celebration is honestly a perfect, and obviously timely, example of why examining this participation is so important. The way Nintendo is exploiting us as fans and general consumers with manufactured scarcity of long-awaited products should not be a cause for celebration at all. And yet, the anger at Nintendo and the criticism of their business practices seem to have subsided, only being vaguely uttered as pleas for them to not do it again in the future. Because we have now gotten what we wanted, and we will buy it no matter what. We have seen some people ask why Nintendo is doing this, thinking it doesn't make any sense. And the answer is quite simple. We are letting them. Super Mario 3D All-Stars became the second best-selling game of the year before it was even released. And that did not happen out of nowhere. It did because we participated in their schemes. Those questions and the critique levied at Nintendo are completely empty if we do not also critically examine the consumers as well, who happens to be us. Asking nicely and giving weak criticism is not going to help make things different if we are then to keep engaging with the cycle of consumption anyway. It is frankly pointless, but that's how they get you. In a way, Nintendo's silence was the perfect breeding ground for hyping their autumn releases. With only 2 weeks to go and no time for perspective, it's easy to fall in the trap and just buy their new Mario collection while it's hot and available. Even we fell for it. Or, well, Kiki did, not me. I would never. We can't entirely escape the fact that participating in playing video games in some way involves the monetary consumption of goods. Not as long as we live in a capitalist society anyway. And by design, it is easy to fall into the industry's grasp and simply become useful, good consumers to them, enthralled, cultivated, and controlled. But perhaps we can engage in playing video games, or even being gamers, on our own terms, rather than what the industry dictates to be correct. If we look at gamer identity more closely, see how it is being exploited, and in turn denounce that exploitation, then maybe we could gain a more healthy approach towards the media that we love. That is to say, that while we don't have a lot of power to change the companies themselves, maybe we as an audience should try to change how we look at the medium itself, reject the identity that the industry is trying to corporately cultivate. To be critical of the companies that sell us things is well and good, but is not truly enough. What we have to do to not become blind consumers is to engage in self-reflection and critically examine our own relationship to those companies and the media they wish us to perpetually consume. And maybe then we can rest easy without knowing if there ever will be a next Nintendo Direct.
Thank you for watching. We would like to thank all our lovely patrons, who are Alimenthal, Andreas, Anonymous, Andreas Argelander, Andrew Jones, Ashell Seasucker, Ethiet, Aaron Rain, Bold Space Marine 33, Basklin, Ben Clark. Ben personally approves this message. Papa Kenzie, Biopanda, Botch Frivarg, Clara Ros, Case Explosion, Chloe, Cult of the Hyena, David J. Bradley, Ember, Emil Olin, Emrasa, Flim Flamberg, Fluffquist, Gage McColgan, Gothic Garfield, Huang Wu, Isak Abrahamsson, Jerry Olsson, Joel Nilsson, Karen Scholz, Jantu, Loke, Magnus, Mar B, Mattias Graman, Melang Rubin, Meowmix64, Miko, Morgan, Nate Kiernan, Nishvat, Oscar Funes Galindo, Preston Manis, Sweet Pink, Riley Rose Smith, Ro, Silaruki, Starfighter, That Jess, Tommy Håkansson, Trash Baby, Tough Emily, Vexelban, Sci-Fi. If you'd also like to join these lovely peoples and hang out in our Discord server, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/transparens. It's in Swedish. Anyway, here are some videos and see you next time!